Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show with your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. And I just want to say Happy New Year to you and Happy New Year to all the listeners.
Absolutely. And I apologize right off the start. I'm going to apologize. I did not get the show out on New Year's Eve. It was a little hectic. I got out on New Year's Day. So technically, Mr. Chris Green, who is just an awesome dude, he was our first guest. But we have, and you can smell it, there's a little gristle in the air. I'm just going to tease it, and you're going to see the Instagram stuff. We got a big guest coming up for this week, a guy we wanted to talk to, and you guys are going to love it. We did this interview a while back, so we've been trying to get our scheduling right, and now we're going to release it first week of the new year.
Yes. Great way to start the year.
Oh, yeah, man.
And I hope everybody had a great one.
Yes.
Hope everybody had a whole great Christmas, New Year's holiday. I can't speak right now. I'm all hopped up on stuff to keep my my brain from exploding.
Exactly. You want to make the NAMM show not in a bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
But actually, normal. So definitely, all the fans, we really appreciate it. You guys are spreading the word, which we really, truly need, and you guys are coming through. We can see it in reflection in the numbers. And, when you go, though, and you want to check out the show or you're telling somebody about it, make sure you tell them to go to ampsandaxescast.com. And there you're going to see all the stuff, all the social media. You're going to see all the episodes. They're all there in the archives, for everything, even This Week in Music that we do once a week, and the archives of our good buddy from up north.
Mr. Jason Sadidas.
That's right. He gives us the
quick link.
Yeah. And boy, does he.
Yes.
And he's playing those awesome Godin guitars and those cool East amps, too. So, definitely.
I can't forget those.
Not at all, man. And you're going to be at NAMM.
Yeah, I'm not going to exhibit at Winter NAMM, but I will be out there for a couple of days.
So, if you see Jeff walking around, he's not as yellow as our emojis, but he's
right. Hopefully not.
It's a rendering of him, and he's got 5 fingers on each hand.
That's true. That's true. I still have all 5. By NAMM time, I might be that yellow.
Oh, there you go.
Wow. Yeah, so, welcome winter. Welcome winter.
So anyway, we were going to do one of our standard openings, but we decided because of a little controversy that happened on New Year's Eve.
A little controversy.
Yes,
controversy.
We know,
and made the national news.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
of course, there's nothing else more important than that, but it did make the national news, and we have local ties to that.
Yeah, we do, and it's kind of crazy that we have these local ties because I was talking to this person right before I guess it was a couple weeks ago, and she was talking to me about how her dad's company does the sound up in New York and is getting ready to do the inaugural. Yeah. So, and she was saying how hard it is to do that. They have to get clearances from everything and everywhere, and then they're searching, and it's... Oh, yeah. But they've been doing it for years. Mm-hmm. So, anyway... I asked her just today, I said, hey, would you want to come on and talk about this? And she said, yeah.
And the reason is because, and I don't know if anybody knows what we're alluding to, but it's the
maybe I should have
Mariah Carey audio malfunction on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Which seemed to blow up the news feeds.
Maryland Sound is the company that
MSI,
that provided the sound up there. Now, what we're going to find out from Meredith, the daughter of
whose dad owns MSI, yes, good friend of ours.
Yes, we can ask her if it was there, because see, they have many levels of how they do this, right? So they just probably provided the speakers, the amplification,
right?
They probably did not send a sound engineer or a mixing engineer. They probably, the network of ABC probably provided that, because it's their show, and those guys have to take cues from ABC's guys.
There are so many people involved in that. Have Mariah probably has her own people there with that are in charge of the tracks and things.
Yeah.
MSI, is going to be in charge of front of house and of, monitor feed to whatever they're supposed to be, whatever they're given to and told to put in any given monitor, whether it's a wedge or an in-ear. Yeah. And then there's TV production people, who get an entirely another feed that they work with to go out, over the air. So, I mean, there's lots of hands in this.
Uh-huh. And there's lots of stories, because if you read it from Mariah's side, she was there for rehearsal, and she kept complaining that she didn't have any monitors. They said, don't worry, they'll work at the time of the show. And then when you hear ABC side, they say she never showed up for rehearsal, which is what I believe.
Right. She sent her assistant or something to, her stand-in.
If you ever see a rehearsal for the Grammys, they put cardboard cutouts in the seats.
Oh, in the audience, of course. Yeah. So who you're supposed to be looking at
exactly.
at that evening.
Yeah, because nobody shows up for it, even though they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. But everybody, they're not going to go to a rehearsal for something like that, because they're going to say, look, just send my flunky down, test everything, make sure everything's where it should be, and then go. Because I know how to do this. Because what the biggest part is how everybody doesn't. They're like, I can't believe she lip syncs. It's like, really?
Yeah. They all do it. The thing is that they are supposed to be singing a lot of the time, but they're also singing to 6 tracks that are identical to what they're singing. That's how these singers sound so big recorded in the first place.
Yep.
It's not one track. There are 6 identical tracks going.
Except for our girl, Pink.
True.
She really does it. I don't even know how, but hey, it's a whole different ballgame there. That's somebody who is not going to be called out on the floor for that. That's for sure.
No.
And if she'll be 30 feet in the air suspended on some silk scarves. So
and still singing.
Still upside down.
Still upside down, still singing. Yeah, that girl's amazing. Yeah, so we're going to bring in our good friend Meredith Marx, whose dad owns MSI, and we're just gonna get her take on it for a few minutes, and then we're going to bring in our guest of the week.
Yeah, I like that.
So here we go. All right, and we are back with Miss Meredith Marx, whose dad actually owns MSI and was in the news this week, with the Carey debacle. So we'll see what's going on from the horse's mouth, shall we say? So, hi Meredith,
hi guys.
What's your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, my dad was the wanted man. We call him the wanted man this week. I mean, everybody was chasing him, from Good Morning America to the Today Show and all of the magazines. And, to be honest, my dad does not want any fame. My dad doesn't want his face out there. He doesn't really care. He just wants, to provide good sound for people and run his business. And, that's the bottom line. What happened was, and what the true story is that, Mariah Carey did not have a sound check. She went to a kind of dance rehearsal, if we will, and she got on the stage and she kind of carried around her gold microphone and had the people lift her up and swing her around, and there was really no sound check. And when you're at a huge event like this in Times Square, it's very necessary. You guys as musicians know it's very necessary to have a sound check. And so my dad had Gloria Estefan. She did 2 sound checks. Rachel Platten. DNCE, and they all did sound checks, and they all had no problems, no hiccups during their performances. She didn't even need her earpiece. What it comes down to with that is, here's the story with that, with the earpiece. When you're doing a large event like this, the sound company likes to be able to have access to you to mic you up, get your pack on correctly, get you out onto stage and make you sound good. That's the ultimate result. And everybody was available. Whoever took the stage was available right before they took the stage to get mic'd up properly and everything, except for Mariah. She basically told her people, everybody back off. Nobody's allowed to get near me. You couldn't touch her. So what happens is that, the sound guy hands the mic pack to an assistant, to another assistant, and then to her manager, who then puts it on her. And you only hope that he did a good job doing it, because if you're not going to allow the people to put it on you, who knows what buttons were pushed, what was jostled. And that's what happened. Yeah. We're not saying that, my dad himself took the stage, did a sound check himself. He heard all of the monitors. He did an earpiece check himself. It sounded perfect. Jenny McCarthy was there. She did an interview. It sounded great. You see all the dancers on stage. They're all in time. They're hearing the same thing that she's hearing.
What we're supposed to hear.
Yeah, what you're supposed to hear. The first song, when she was covered by the feathers, you can see that she's already off with her lip syncing.
Yeah.
She was not. She was to track on that song. Obviously, it went off without a hitch. They move the feathers. She moves down. Even Jenny McCarthy said maybe she couldn't see the teleprompter. It was very small. She maybe couldn't see the words or what she was supposed to do. When you don't rehearse and you don't get yourself prepared for a huge gig like this, it's gonna fall apart.
Well, and you get one shot. It's one of the biggest national gigs of the year. It's New Year's Eve, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. And it might have behooved her to take it just a little bit more seriously, don't you think?
I think so. And, we have to say, and you guys know this, when you're doing a large event like this, Maryland Sound busts their butt. It doesn't take a day to do this. This is months of preparation. Maryland Sound has been doing this for 17 years. They've done it through all different kinds of weather problems and issues. And every time it's gone off just perfectly. They haven't had any problems. And so what this has really become is kind of a blame game. And it's not necessary. She never really pointed fingers and said, sound company. Here's a little tidbit. When Mariah started out when she was 18 years old, my dad was her first sound guy. So my dad goes back with Mariah to when she was with Tommy Mottola. Mm-hmm. He did the sound for their wedding. He was there. And we used to do the sound for her a lot. And then what happened was she dropped Tommy Mottola. She dropped all of her companies and she went on her own. And, you see how she is now. She's not the same. So, it really, my dad never wants to get into a blame game. My dad just, wants to set the record straight. What happened was, everybody came out on Sunday without the major news channels because it's New Year's Day and it's Sunday. Mm-hmm. So really everybody touched on it starting on Monday when people were back on air and were able to touch on it more. And he just kind of let people say what they wanted to say. And then he felt the time was right to then give his own statement and then move on. And he's doing the inauguration in a few weeks, and he's like, I'm not going to dwell on it. He's just going to move forward.
Yeah, and you can't. What's the point of dwelling on it? It's here. It's all but gone already. And MSI, Maryland Sound, is, it's not a little fly-by-night company. You guys have been around forever and, international. Mega huge company.
Yeah, my dad started in the late 60s with Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, and we built up Maryland Sound in the early 70s. I was not born yet, so when I say we, I meant my family, but not me personally. And then,
an old guy joke,
he did
wasn't
such... Hey. So he basically, he did some of the biggest tours ever. He did Pink Floyd. We did Whitney Houston. We had Mariah Carey. We had Gloria Estefan and the Miami Sound Machine. Michael Bolton, Hall & Oates. We provided sound for some really big tours, and kind of got away from the touring recently, and we're focusing more on like big events like Times Square, New Year's Eve, and the inauguration, and other events that he's doing with like NASA and some space center. I don't even know what he's doing, but my dad like loves a challenge, and so. My family knows their stuff, and we don't take things like this, too serious, because people are going to talk and give their version. And the thing is that, unless you were there, you didn't really know the scoop. There was a lot of on-air speculation. And,
I'm sure.
Yeah. And it goes like this too, right? If you did it for 17 years, there's a reason that you got the 17th year and then the 18th year. It's not because you do okay work. You do great work. You do what you're supposed to do. They're professional. They get in, they get out. They the whole bit, and you won't get called back if this was something that happened every year. But she's ultimately lazy. She has F-you money, not F-me money. I mean, it literally is that much. She could literally burn 10 grand and laugh. And this is not somebody who lives in our world at all, but definitely tries to put herself in our world. If you've ever seen any of her blogs, it is ridiculous, because she talks to people like she's from the street, and that's the last place she's been. I'm surprised they didn't helicopter her fat ass in, and drop her on the stage. I did notice that the dancers had to carry her up to the second stage and then carry her down from the second stage.
Yes, and she, it's not classy when you're on stage and you're like, oh, dip me here and lift me here. Yeah. I mean, right there shows that you had a lack of preparation. Yeah. You don't see people doing that anymore. People coordinate their routines and they do it. And the sad thing is that I saw Mariah when she was first starting out and when my dad was doing sound for her, and she's a very talented person, but much like Whitney Houston, when you start to dip a little bit, you're not as good as when you were earlier on, and it's probably just a career guidance thing.
Yeah, and that lifestyle doesn't help,
Yes.
You're not hungry anymore. There's no if she never put out another album, she would never have it would never be a financial issue in her life.
Yeah, she'd never go hungry. Trust me.
Right. She'd be just fine.
Yeah. I mean, on the Christmas song alone, she could live forever.
Yes. Yeah.
Royalties on that alone, she could live forever.
Yeah.
But, and also let's make point that, this is not the first troubled performance that she's had. She's had several troubled performances in the past few years that are all out there on the internet for people to Google. And so, it's again, it became a blame game. And so it's really just taking ownership of your, being responsible for your own actions. And that's what it is.
Well, there you go, man.
Well, I think she should just own up to that and go, yeah, my bad, move on.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that way it would just go away and she could attempt to continue her career. But I know you guys are going to be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to see Lionel Richie in March, and she's supposed to be the guest on this tour. And so with a tour coming up, I know I'm like not excited to see her. With a tour coming up, it's better to save face and just kind of, own up to it, and people will have more respect for you. And then you can go and do your tour and maybe not get booed off stage. I don't know. I mean, who's to say who's going to accept her and take her seriously, or if she could potentially get booed? I mean, it could happen.
I will tell you this. 2 minutes after she did that, I went on Twitter, checked out her feed. It was over 9,000 tweets. The very next morning I got up, there was 3.7 million tweets.
Oh, yeah.
And none of them were good.
No.
They said Mariah Carey died in 2016 along with everybody else. Her career died. I mean, it was amazing how many people. You saw one or two every now and then. I got to give it up for her taking that and standing there. It's like, well, What you ought to do though is when she's on that tour and you go to see, you go to the show, just take her feet on the inner ear and just drop it off one, for a couple minutes. Watch her flounder around.
Well, like she said on Twitter right away, bleep happens. And, if something were to happen with the sound, we would gladly take responsibility because that's what you need to do. Sure. But that's what happens is, you can't just sit there and point fingers and have people take responsibility for your actions.
Seemed like everybody else was functioning just fine.
Yeah, and that four-channel 100-watt PA that you guys provide for these national acts is fine.
Exactly. Well, Meredith, we're gonna jump here. We're gonna bring our guest on, but thanks for coming on and just because we knew Mick said, hey, Meredith could come on sure. Because we got ties to the company and we'll just get their story straight from them. So thanks for coming on, clearing the air up, and if she's smart, she'll just go, yeah, maybe next time I'll rehearse some more, and everybody will be fine. And you guys are going to go on and have a great inaugural and every other show that you're doing. And I hope 2017 is a kick-ass year for you and everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All good, man. See you soon.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
All right, and there you have the story from the Maryland Sound side, MSI.
Absolutely.
It seems like everybody else didn't have one iota of trouble, so you could draw your own conclusions.
Yeah.
So
look, I've read 5 or 6 articles, one from their management, one from ABC's management. Haven't heard anything from Maryland Sound because they're not putting that out there as much as they are from the two.
Again,
yeah, exactly.
Like she said, he just wants to remain low key.
Yep.
Get the job done.
But we got the story.
We did get the story, and now we're going to get another story.
I'm laughing already.
We've been wanting to have this guest on for a while.
Oh, I love this guy. Oh,
yeah, totally.
Amazing guitar player.
Amazing guitar player and funny as hell, both in personality and playing. Oh. He's just an all-around, well-rounded, comical musical genius.
And plays the hell out of a Telecaster.
Yes, he does. He does. With his own signature pickups now.
Yeah, man. From our good buddy.
Yes.
Mr. Fleegler. Mr. Fleegler. Yeah. I tell you, anything. I'm telling you, I always say it, and I'll say it now because it's got to be a tagline every time I say Richie's name. If Richie Fleegler has his name on it, just buy it. Don't care what it is, just buy it. I'm guaranteed it's going to be fine.
Well, there you go. All right, we're gonna find out what Richie turned our guest onto when we come back with our guest of the week, the one, the only, Mr. Greg Koch.
Hey, this is Chris Green from Psycheto, and you're listening to Amps and Axes.
Okay, listeners, we are back as promised because we keep our promises here, and you're going to be glad you stuck around because we got a good one for you today. The one, the only, Mr. Greg Koch. Greg, how are you?
I am excellent. How are you gentlemen doing this day?
We're more excellent now.
I'm
just going to make noises.
I have to tell one story, and I think I've told it on the air once.
Okay.
We were at NAMM last year, and our good buddy Richie Fleegler from Fishman.
Yes.
He said, "You guys want to meet Greg?" And we were like, I was like, yes.
Who says no to that?
So he took us in a room, and Greg came in, and we're sitting there and we're talking, and then you had to go out and you had to do the demo for your pickups.
It was demo time.
Right. And I saw that, the demo was amazing. All your demos are just spot on, and it's like it's just pulling from everywhere. And afterwards, I went up to you and I said, and this is where your humor is just as fast as your guitar playing. I said, there's so much information. I know that some of it's got to leave. I said, what do you do? Forget to wipe every other time? And without even blinking an eye, you went, doesn't everybody? And I thought, well, there's nothing else to say.
Here we go. We're out of here. See you. Thank you very much. Wow. That was crazy.
Lord's mercy.
Well, it was NAMM, and God knows what day it was, but, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of whoop, whoop, whoop.
Everybody forgets it at NAMM. So I'm going to do what I usually do, Greg, and with all our guests, we're gonna take a trip in the Wayback Machine and find out where Mr. Greg Koch was born and raised, and how you came to be in this wonderful, wacky world of music. So give us some history, man. Tell us a little.
Well, I actually am from where I still live, beautiful Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. Chronic Wauwatosis, as I like to call it. And it is a delicious little community in the Milwaukee metropolitan area where beer and cheese are manifest and the mullet still is warm with pride. And, although I currently don't have a mullet, at one point I was sporting a fiendish skullet as the hair began to retreat, but be that as it may. So I am from here. I went to school, college for music in beautiful Stevens Point, Wisconsin, where I majored in jazz guitar. But let's be clear, my studies were more centered on beer during that particular tenure. Although I did manage to learn enough about, navigating chord changes and writing down the jams and things of this nature. And then I always just wanted to have my own band. So I never really wanted to be a sideman per se. That's why I never was really attracted to moving to one of the big music centers. My thought was, well, I'll come back home, and my band got popular around the area pretty fast. And so that was kind of my insurance policy. I thought, well, I'll be a big cheese around here, and then I can make forays into the world at large and see what happens. But then my insurance policy is I can be, at least a prince in podunk. So that has kind of worked, for lack of a better term. And then once I started reproducing and having kids, it just made more sense to stay here anyway. So that's why I ended up staying in beautiful Milwaukee and letting the good times roll.
Nice. Now you jumped from being born there to going to music school there. But was there anyone musical in your family that drove you in that direction? Any mom, dad, brothers, sisters play?
Well, it's kind of funny. No one played other than my mom plays piano. I was the youngest of 7 kids. I guess, my older brother, he was the oldest and I was the youngest, and there was 5 girls in between, which, as you might think, that is kind of added to my affection of blues music and just complaining in general, with having 5 ancillary mother figures constantly correcting me and adding their own special kind of positive reinforcement.
Absolutely.
So I ended up rooming with my brother, and he is 14 years older than I. So he went to high school from like 1966 to the year of my birth to 1970. And so all of his records were, Hendrix and Cream and the James Gang and the Beatles and Stones, the usual suspects. But particularly the Hendrix and the Cream thing really got to me. So I was exposed to all of that music and had an affinity for it at a very young age. And my mom played piano, and she showed me some piano stuff. But I think the biggest thing was seeing how my brother would talk about Cream. I'd be with my buddies and we'd be playing Guns or whatever. We'd come into my room, and my brother would be in front of the record player playing Cream. And he would look at us, and I go, "What are you listening to?" He goes, "This is the greatest power trio in the history of man. Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker, and Eric Clapton.
It's true.
The greatest of all time." And he'd go on and on and on. And so to me, growing up, it's like the guitar player was superior to almost all other pop culture figures, and sports figures, movie stars, whatever. The guitar player, and it was like a half shaman, half porn star. You know what I mean? And so I was like, "Hey, I want to be that."
That's awesome. Yeah,
that is so cool.
That's the Big Brother influence, man.
And 14 years, that's a huge gap. So you were looking up to him
big time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because the next one was just a woman. There was another,
and then another.
Yes, although they had some good records. My sister Mary, who was the oldest sister, she had good records too, and she was more into. I got the Zappa and Allman Brothers and that kind of stuff from her record collection.
Wow.
So she was a pretty pivotal figure as well as far as that is concerned, because Zappa was a huge influence. if not entirely musically, certainly personality and vocabulary wise, I gleaned a lot from, saying things at the time I had no understanding of what I was saying, extraterrestrial gratification and whatever I was saying as a youngster from listening to Frank Zappa. But that was a huge influence on me as well.
Wow, and that's from a female. That's really
different.
Yeah, few and far between.
But I now. You can kind of see where that humor side comes in.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yes. Well, I have to say, I come from good humor genes. I mean, the Koch clan has a propensity for merriment. So there's pretty good humor across the board. Deranged humor.
Well, it's those long winters.
Well, exactly.
It's true.
Indeed.
I can see the dinner tables now.
Well, the other thing that comes from long winters is 7 children.
That's it. And the Church of Rome, of course.
There you go. So you mentioned you had the band in town, of which you were the big cheese. You made a cheese joke early on. So
there you go.
Yes.
So what was that like? Were you doing a lot of Hendrix and Cream, or were you just writing all original stuff, or a mix of both? Or
well, when I finally put when I got back from college and put my own band together, this is probably like 23-ish. That band mostly did if we did original tunes, and then we would do kind of original interpretations of some old blues tunes that we would kind of spice up, shall we say. But we would do we did a couple Stevie Ray tunes, because that at the time was so, he had just passed at that point, and it was, if you played anything that was kind of blues rock oriented, especially in clubs, it would be expected that you'd touch a little bit. So we did like Riviera Paradise, and we did a couple of tunes off the Vaughan Brothers record, which I really, really liked. Mm-hmm. I think we did like the Telephone Song and Million Miles from Nowhere. And then we did a couple Allman Brothers things, that Shades of Two Worlds had just come out. So we did a song called End of the Line. We used to do that. And we did a few Little Feat songs, but mostly, those tunes were kind of like the appetizer to get into our tunes. And that worked for the most part. And then after a while, I weaned off all of the covers as much as possible. And then, we'd throw in a little Hendrix here and there and whatever else. But for the most part, we tried to stick to more of an original modus operandi, shall we say.
An original with a trio?
Well, it started off as a power trio, and then drummer sang great, still does, and bass player sang nice background vocals, and I sang. So between all of us, it was a cool thing. But I always wanted a keyboard player, so we had a keyboard player for a while, and then we ended up going back to a power trio. And then once I started traveling more, I just stayed trio because that was the only way that we could make money.
Right, right.
And so we ended up just being a trio in that regard. Now I have a keyboard player back in the band, although I've been gigging with that original lineup again. That original band was called Greg Koch and the Tone Controls. And that particular band was very popular around here, so we still do gigs with that original power trio lineup. But I've got this other aggregation now with my son on drums, who's a funky little son. He's not so little. He's actually as tall as I am and has lion-like Robert Plant hair.
Nice.
Which is something I no longer, let's be honest, I never possessed. But that band is a little more groove-oriented, and that has keyboards, bass player, and a really good conga player. So it's kind of that's a groovy little band, I'll tell you what. If I may be so bold as to throw that forward.
I love that.
Yeah, man.
That. I can't believe you mentioned you did Riviera Paradise. That is my favorite Stevie Ray song, and it's
a great song.
It is not an easy thing to do.
No.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
It's a good tune, absolutely.
You still do it with the tone controls?
Every now and again, I'll whip it out. What? I'm sorry about that. Yes, we will do it every now and again. And I reference it every now and again in those Wildwood videos, too. I'll do a little Riviera Paradise over there one time. And, the kids dig it.
As well they should.
The Wildwood stuff, speaking of that, is I watch that all the time. You do a lot of Facebook Live stuff now.
Yes,
for those guys. And then, of course, you can check out his Instagram where he's doing just crazy stuff like the Johnny B. Metal thing.
I love that. I'm going to do that from now on. I'm just going to flat out do it between songs once in a while. Do it.
I can safely tell you this, Greg, because I love that, that Family Guy style type of humor.
Yes.
I have watched that video now no less than a baker's dozen, and I can't stop laughing every time when you come to that break and you start making the noise. And the camera guy, he never laughs. And this time he actually was like, what? that was
it's
so
catching off guard.
They were a little taken aback on that. That's good, clean fun.
That is total good, clean fun.
Those videos, that's in Colorado, right? Don't you?
It is. I fly out there once a month. As a matter of fact, I was there last week, and I'm going again next week because we're making up for some lost time. My travel schedule kind of, fluctuates a bit. So yeah, I go out there once a month for 4 days. I usually go out on a Monday morning, and we shoot videos for 4 days straight, and then I go home on a Thursday night. And we try to get it done about 25 videos a day.
Wow.
But we've been a little loosey-goosier with that kind of quota system as of late. But it used to be I'd do 30 videos a day. That was the way it was for the first few years. So, and then what's crazy is that we've had 3 different video guys now that have been in charge of the project in terms of filming it, editing it, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And the amount of videos is ridiculous. A lot of which, most of them, get online, but a lot of them were never made it online. I mean, there's just there's a lot of stuff. Let's just put it that way. A lot of video footage.
I'm smelling an outtakes DVD.
And trust me, there is a lot of outtakes.
Well, and the thing is about the videos is that you're playing these amazing guitars that they get in. A lot of custom shop stuff from Fender and Gibson, and you just go down the line. These are not your run-of-the-mill guitars.
Right,
they're very.
Oh, that brings me back to a question I had. I wanted to find out what his rig started out like back in the the tone control days. What was your first rig and first guitars and amps? Do you remember, and do you still have them?
I do remember. Although it was interesting because I had just got done. I played in a band with this gal that sang and played keyboard. She was great. She had just come off the road. The Bodines, of course, a popular band from around here, and she had played keyboards with the Bodines. And she sings great. She plays like Chuck Leavell's type piano. And I was in her band for about a year. And in that period of time, my rig was a Jim Kelly FACS amplifier.
FACS, yeah.
FASC, whatever the fuck it was. I'm sorry. I think I swore there.
It's okay.
But that amp was my jam right there. That amp was like a double deluxe and had an attenuator for the second channel. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, I'll hear tapes. Of course, they are cassette tapes of that era when I used that amp, and it sounded so good. And for some reason, I blew it up at some point. And I've never been very technically astute I never work on my amps. I never work on my guitars. I give it to guys and go, do that thing. And at the time in the early 90s, this is like 89, 90, for some reason, getting good 6V6s was kind of a hard thing.
Yeah.
And that amp never sounded the same once I blew it up, and we retubed it. And it sounded harsh. It just didn't sound right. So I ended up getting rid of it, and I traded it to a buddy of mine who then I think he sold it to Jesse Johnson from the Time or some damn thing. But that was my amp. And so when I first started the tone knobs, as I like to call them, I used that amp. But by then it was starting to sound not quite right. And so right around that time, I'd entered into Guitar Player magazine. Had this. They had just come out with the reissue Blues Breaker amp, right? And they had this: send in, your 3 minutes of your best blues licks, and we're going to give away a Blues Breaker combo. We're going to give away a JTM 45 half stack. We're going to give away this, that, and the next thing. So I sent in a tape. I forgot all about it, and lo and behold, I get a call one day, ironically, from Richie Fliegler.
Nice.
And a bunch of people, and they're like, hey, we got your tape. You've won first prize in this thing. I didn't win grand prize. I won first prize. Whatever. And they said, we're going to send you this JTM 45 half stack. So they sent me that amp, and I've never been. Here and there I've been a head and cabinet guy, but I'm a combo guy. I need that open back thing. I need that ambience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting rid of it, and the Basemans were just reissued at that point in time. So I actually traded my thing to get a Baseman. And so when I was in the first full year of the Tone Controls, I used 2 Tweed Basemans.
Wow.
Reissues. And then I switched to Super Reverbs. And then Super Reverbs, I bought 2 Blackface Super Reverbs. And those were my main amps for a few years, and then I ended up switching to. I started using Pro Juniors. I would use 2, and then I ended up using 4. So I recorded with them. I played with them because I liked the idea of just going into this little amp and cranking it up, and it was great. But they weren't a really road-ready amplifier. So then a buddy of mine said, well, I think you like the sound of those EL84 tubes because that's what's in those little Pro Juniors. You should really try out that Mesa Boogie Maverick amp. And I was like, well, I'm not really a boogie guy. It's not really my thing. But then I tried the amp and I really, really liked it. So I ended up using this Maverick single 12 combo with a 112 extension cabinet. And this was right when I started to do Fender stuff. I wasn't hired by Fender, but I was doing stuff for them here and there, and I was kind of solidifying that relationship. And I remember getting a call from Don Johnson. He's kind of a Fender icon.
Yeah.
And he called me up and he said, rumor has it you've been seen gigging with a Mesa Boogie amplifier. Now, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I will say that your ascendance in this company would be greatly hindered. But wow, he's starting to sound like Colonel something or other. or Rooster, the Rooster character.
Oh, yeah.
Would be greatly hindered by the fact that you're playing this boogie amplifier.
Now, boy, I said, boy.
He had me get a hold of Richie Fliegler again. So here I'm on the phone with Richie, and Richie goes, hey, if you like the sound of those little amps, you should really get our our new custom Vibrolux amplifier because you can crank that thing and it sounds like the word of God. So I got that amp, and that has been my main amp off and on since then. And that was 1995, I believe.
Wow.
I've used things and I continue to use other things, but I still have that amp and still use it. So sorry, that was probably more information than you wanted, but
that's absolutely perfect. And it's funny because you got the Marshall from Richie at Marshall, and then Richie moves over to Fender, and you get the new amps from Richie at Fender.
And now he's got the pickups.
yeah, because that's back in that time, Richie and Mitch were both at Marshall, Korg Marshall.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Marshall.
So what was the guitar like? From the early days to now. Did you ever play anything other than Telly and T-style and Fender guitars?
Well, what was interesting is that the whole time I played with that gal that I was telling you about, I played a 335. I switched to a 335 as my main guitar, like senior year, end of senior year in high school. Actually, no. What happened was I went to this jazz camp when I was in high school, and I played a Telly. I had an old, it was like a 68 Telly. And that was my main guitar. I loved it. And I went to this jazz camp, and there was this guy there. We became fast buddies, and he played a 335. And he always wanted to try out a Telly, and I always wanted to try out a 335. So for the week of this camp, we swapped guitars. So at the end of the camp, I was like, I'm buying a 335. So my dad got me this job. One of his clients was owner of this plastics company. So I worked. My dad had me work in a plastics factory. It's like, hey, Dad, thanks for making sure that my kids have 3 heads. But be that as it
may, I was going to say that's where the twisted humor came from. But
So I saved up my dough and I bought a blonde 335 dot neck reissue.
Nice.
And that was my main amp, or my main guitar, for quite a few years. And then it got stolen. And then I got another one. It was because I was in my dad's car. It was actually covered under homeowner's insurance. So I got another 335. So in the interim of me being in that band with that gal for a year, I wanted to switch. And I always had Tellys in the arsenal. But I wanted to switch to a Strat. I always liked the sound of Strats. Just ergonomically, I couldn't get my mind around. So I kind of weaned myself off the 335. by playing. I had an American standard Telecaster that I put a Seymour Duncan Stag Mag pickup in the neck position. I put a single, I think it was a quarter pounder in the middle, and then I put a broadcaster pickup in the back. And I put a 5-way toggle switch in and a push-pull for the neck pickup so that I could get that single coil sound if I wanted. Because when I played 335, I was mostly a neck pickup guy.
Wow.
I was into the neck pickup sound. So I kind of weaned myself. I wanted some of those out-of-phasey Strat sounds. I was used to kind of the telly, and so that was my main guitar, but I was really aiming towards the Strat because I wanted to get my wiggle bar on. I wanted to make sure I could do all my Hendrixian dippery-doos and things of this nature. So then I saved up and I bought a, I don't know if you guys recall, but Fender came out with, in their reissue series, they had a Mary Kay, like 50 style Strat and a Mary Kay like early 60 style Strat, and I bought an early 60 style with the rosewood board, so it was that blonde with the gold hardware.
Yeah, and did it have binding on the neck?
It did not have binding.
Okay, because I know like the Eric Johnson of rosewood fingerboard has binding on it.
Is that bound really?
Yeah, that's cool.
And he said that I guess they must have offered that on the Mary Kay at one point, and that's why he put the binding on there.
That is super cool. But this one did not have the binding. But that was then I forced myself to play that guitar. So I got used to the Strat. I was having fun playing that. Actually, I used that through the Jim Kelly to win that guitar, that amplifier from Richie Fleetler and Company. Nice. And then I was working at this music store during the day. I got done with college. I'm working at this music store during the day and gigging at night. And the music store I worked at was kind of the cool guy place where the cool guy guitar players either worked there or certainly all the other guys shopped there. So it had all the cool gear. And the store got in these Gary Levinson Blade guitars. And the manager of the shop's like, you should try out one of these guitars. I'm like, okay. So I checked it out. What I really liked about it was, it played great. It wasn't totally noise canceling, but it was pretty quiet because of the pickups that he used. But it had this little mini toggle switch that allowed you to get just like a little incremental bump. Or you could actually, and it has like 3 different positions. The middle position was like standard output. If you went one down, it got really transparent and glassy, like a good funk kind of sound.
Nice.
And then if you went all the way up, it gave you just not quite a humbucker, but it gave you some beef, but it wasn't quite as drastic as like a Clapton preamp. So that was my main guitar for a few years. And then the Fender Custom Shop started making guitars. And there was a buddy of mine in town that had this 56 Strat, and every time I would gig with him, he'd let me use this guitar. This blues guy in town, and he had already put the jumbo frets in it, and it had this big old neck on it. So I basically wanted to order a guitar that was like his. So I ordered a Sonic Blue ash-bodied maple neck having Strat from the Fender Custom Shop. I still had that guitar, and that was my main guitar for quite some time. But what's funny about it is that the Fender guys came out to see me at a club. There was a Thursday I was playing, and they came out to see the band, and I had just gotten that Custom Shop guitar, and I used it, and afterwards they're like, we got to get you written up in Fender Frontline. Would you be interested in doing clinics? I'm like, absolutely. And then the next night, unbeknownst to me, I'm playing with the tone controls at this club, and this guy comes out from Fender. Now, under normal circumstances, when I was playing with the tone controls, I would have been playing that Blade guitar because I hadn't quite worked the bugs out of that Custom Shop Strat yet as far as getting used to it. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, I ended up using the Custom Shop guitar that night, and he showed up. But I always think about that. I was like, what if he'd have showed up and I was playing that other guitar? You know what I mean? Not that would have been a non-starter, but it certainly would have been a little weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely. It's just it's funny that you went so easily from the 335 to Fenders. Some guys can do that easily, and I'm not good enough to have a problem with that. But some guys are just so in tune to one scale length or the other that it's a problem for them to go from one to the other. Well,
it wasn't really the feel of the guitar; it was more the sound. I mean, I remember I used to talk about this with my first guitar teacher back in the day. We would talk about the Gibson or the Fender mindset. It's like you get used to the thick sound of humbuckers, and you play to that, And then when you play single coil pickups, it's a whole different type of thing. So I'm kind of glad I went through all of that, because now when I started doing those videos, it was like, Gibsons, yeah, whatever. Oh yeah, I got my tricks on Gibsons. Oh, I'll play some Fender. I got my tricks on. You know what I mean? I had the skill set for both realms kind of dialed in, so I could go from one to the other. But switching from one to the other doesn't really bother me at this point, but that's many, many years of a misspent youth working on all the bugs.
Absolutely.
As they say.
And you're not a short in stature, so I imagine your reach doesn't really, the 25.5 doesn't really phase you as much as it could for
somebody going from
somebody with smaller hands.
24 3/4 to 25.5. Yeah.
I do find that some of the subtleties of the vibratos that I do is easier to do on a Gibson for sure. And but that's it's minutia. You know what I mean? It's a very small change that I have to kind of deal with. But other than that, I enjoy the difference between them, because then I can kind of play to the strengths of that particular platform, if I may be so bold.
Sure. Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Are you still using the same vibro reissues or the custom shop vibros now when you can?
Well, I use all kinds of different stuff. I mean, in the last couple years, I've kind of I've started a relationship with the Koch amplifier people, which was kind of a funny thing, because over the years I would see them advertising their amps, and at one point I remember being at NAMM, I was in the Fender booth, and someone came up to me and they gave me the slip, and it was saying it was just kind of an advertisement for Koch amplifiers, and it says Koch amps rhymes with chalk. I'm like, they can't use that. That's mine, And then I was in some various different places, and I tried their amps. I was like, man, they make good shit, So I always thought it was interesting. I was like, one of these days it would be good to kind of hook up with them. And I think it was 2 years ago, maybe, I was at Music Messa for Fishman, and right across from where the Fishman booth was the Koch amplifier booth.
Wow.
And so I went over there. I said, I've been, meaning to try these amps out. And then finally the guy, Dolph Koch comes up to me and says, my wife and I are big fans of yours. We'd love you to track out one of our amps. I said, well, if you'd let me use one at the Fishman booth, I'll use it over there. So I ended up using their Twin Tone. I think it's a Twin Tone 3. Man, that's a good sounding amp. So I ended up using that on a tour that I did in Europe last year. Actually, I used it for a couple tours, and man, those amps sound great. So we started talking about doing a signature amp. We haven't quite got it all done yet, but it's in the works. And
well, the nameplate's already done.
Right? It's like the Namesake series. I dig it.
Right. This is the only relationship where he can't have a signature series.
Seriously,
it's already there.
Yeah, well, I was thinking we just call it the Greg.
There you go.
You got to call it the Gristle.
Well, the Gristle, yeah. Gotta call it the Gristle.
But it's kind of weird because, when I'm at Wildwood, I play a lot of different stuff that I certainly like, but I'm not affiliated with, other than the fact that I'm doing those videos for Wildwood. But I really like those Friedman amps. I mean, it's not really something I would usually gravitate to, although I have to say I do love Plexi Marshalls, and I've used them in the studio on many occasions. And I've often said that, especially 100-watt Marshalls it's like the word of God. Of course, you can't work anywhere unless you're Joe Bonamassa or somebody who can go in and crank that loud, but they're hard to use. But the reason why I like the Friedman so much is because they have the nuances of a cranked Plexi, but at any volume, which I thought was really weird, which I dug. So we ended up using them, not simply because I wanted to, but it just seemed to make sense for the Wildwood videos. For the lead sound is that we're using that small box 50 head and a 212 cabinet, and then we A/B between that and that Tone King Imperial, which is also a very nice little amp. But one day I was out there about 3 months ago, and we film at an off-site location, and then we usually go back to the store at the end of the day, and I hang out for a little while. And sometimes I'll do some extra video content, just like on cell phones or whatever, while we're at the store for someone that wants me to play a particular guitar or whatever. So I come in, and they're like, hey, can you do a video on this guitar? I'm like, sure. So I get this guitar out, and they bring out this Friedman single 12 combo, and they plug me into it, and I'm playing. They're like, well, what do you think of that amp? I was like, well, it sounds great. And they got their cameras on. I'm like, it's yours. I go, what?
Wow.
Some guy who really enjoys the videos wanted to do something nice for you and found out that you didn't actually own one of those Friedmans, and he bought that for you. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He wanted to remain anonymous, but it's a small box 50 112 combo.
You got to be.
I can tell you, it sounds awesome. It sounds good.
You got to be shitting me, man.
No, that was glorious. Because they are not inexpensive.
No, they are not.
Yeah.
No.
That's, wow. And he stayed anonymous.
He stayed anonymous. And then for a while there, I was thinking, well, did Friedman just buy it for me? And they just don't want people to know about it. But I have no idea.
You know when you're going to meet him in the parking lot at NAMM. Hi. Bought you that amplifier.
You're pretty.
You're pretty, right?
Yeah. Don't worry. It ain't going to hurt too bad when I'm chopping you up and putting you in bags so I can have you in the freezer. You know,
exactly.
It won't be anything crazy, but yeah.
God.
It's not the price, it's the cost.
There you go. It's not the price, it's the cost. I love that.
Wow, that's crazy. That's like winning better. That's better than the Guitar World contest.
Yes, it's pretty cool.
Only time will tell.
I'm using that amp. Another buddy of mine from the area here made an amp for me, and he's got an amp company called Blue Fire. Yeah. And I wanted, we were talking about amps, and I was like, I'd like a 410 amp, but I really like harmonic vibrato, like on those old brown face amps that Fender made, that real kind of Univibe-esque vibrato. And he said, no problem. So he ended up making me an amp that's basically like a double deluxe with 410s, with really good spring reverb, and that intoxicating harmonic vibrato. And he needed a name, and I said, let's call it the Harmonic Pummeler 3000. and it's
sorry, it won't fit on the faceplate.
So on the faceplate, it says Blue Fire Harmonic Pummeler 3000, and then the standby switch doesn't say standby, it says to battle, which is one of my switches.
To battle. Wow.
This is awesome.
And then a local builder, a buddy of mine named Rick Landrick, I was helping him design this guitar. And it's kind of like a slightly larger bodied double cutaway thin line Telecaster. And I said I wanted an orange sparkle. So those two guys got together, and so I have this matching set, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
In orange sparkle, huh?
Yeah, I dig that orange sparkle.
Wow. Now, when we first fired up, we're in the orange layer, right? That's where we
are indeed. We are in the orange room as we speak. I've got my new prototype Fret King guitar in my very presence here. This one is actually blue. I do have a thing for blue as well. My two early Fender Custom Shop guitars were transparent sonic blue, and I love that color because when it starts to age, it goes kind of mutant green. So I met Trevor Wilkinson through Richie Fliegler. And Trev really liked my signature pickups, and he likes the Fluence pickups in general. So he made me a Tele-type guitar. He calls his the Country Squire. And I used one of his guitars at NAMM last year, and I was like, man, this fucking guitar sounds great. It stays in tune. The intonation's great. It does everything I want it to do. It's light. And they're relatively inexpensive because they're made in, Venus or someplace. So he goes, well, what if I made you a guitar and we do a signature thing? I was like, well, we could certainly talk about it. So we have begun the process. I got a couple of prototypes in June when I was at Nashville NAMM, but they were a little heavy. And he was concerned that he wasn't going to be able to get lightweight ash. And I said, well, let's work on that. So he did find a supply of lightweight ash. And I got to tell you, the guitar is stunning. So we're just working out the deets, as it were, and then that'll come out in at NAMM. But it's a slightly larger bodied Tele-type design, because everyone always looks at me because I'm 6'7", and they go, "What is that ukulele you're playing?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So.
That's right. All your guitars, they're toys.
So it's just a little larger on all sides. It's like a centimeter.
But
it's enough that it looks proportionate to the larger individual.
That's very cool.
Opposite of Randy Rhoads.
Yeah, totally.
It's the other end of the spectrum. That's kind of cool, man.
I wanted to call it the Mancaster, but You got to be careful with Fender. They get sensitive with anything with caster.
Right, exactly.
Yes. Now,
that's funny.
How many guitars are in the collection?
You know what? It's 26, 7, something like that.
It's not too heavy.
No, that's not.
No, it's not crazy. I mean, I was over at the Bonaseum.
Oh yeah.
And I was in Southern California, and I called up Joseph, and I said, "Hey, I'm in town. You want to get together?" He's like, "Why don't you come on over to the Lair?" I'm like, "Okay." So I went to his pad, which is just immaculate. I mean, it's cool pad. It's literally right across the road from Joni Mitchell's old haunt in Laurel Canyon there, right? Not that I've ever been there, but to her place, that is. But it's a beautiful spot. And you go in there, and then you start getting the tour of, well, here's all the amps, and then you go into this other building, which is where a studio once was, and now it's just a guitar porn stronghold. And I've seen most of his Les Pauls and have got to play most of the Lesters, so I was more interested in the Telecaster. So he started bringing them out, and what was weird is that once I got a couple that I really liked, it's like, I just want to play this one for a while. You know what I mean? Because I was like, well, then there's this one, and then there's this one. So I kind of hone in on a guitar and play it. Like, I'll go through phases where if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. So I'll play a guitar exclusively for a period of time, and then I'll go, oh yeah, I got that one, and then I'll take that out, and then I'll use that for a while, and it's kind of weird. I could probably cull my guitars down to about 4, and I would be just fine. So
yeah,
I might gift them to maybe you guys, because I've got just so much extra money hanging around.
Well, you've been hanging around Joe too long. Jesus.
Well, Joe with guitars is like Jay Leno is with cars.
With cars, right? Oh yeah.
Except for it doesn't take 125,000 square feet.
Yeah, he doesn't usually. You don't hear too much about his tellies because he doesn't usually bring them out too much on tour.
Well, Instagram is loaded.
I mean, the last time I was up there with him, he handed me at least 2 59s. Here, try this one. It's like, I don't remember any tellies being in the boat.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it seems, especially, as you were saying, the Instagram feed, he's been showing a lot of tellies lately, and he's been bringing out, he's been playing one, when he does that last shot of the night where he's kind of holding up the guitar to the crowd or whatever, and it's been a telly lately. So he's definitely got some cool tellies, but he had a broadcaster that I really liked. He's like, that one doesn't sound all that good, and I was like, I thought it sounded really good because I like the squishier sounding guitars that are not all that high output. And that one really felt good. I just wanted to play that for about 3 days. But,
it's different hands and it's different styles. What works best for him may not for you. Yeah,
exactly correct. Yeah.
Wow. It's unreal the career that you've had, because it's like you're like some demo god. It's like, hey, you want to know what this guitar sounds like? Well, I'm sure there's a video where Greg is playing it.
When did that actually? When did that actually start for you? I imagine at some point you started to do it. You started to do it, but at some point it started to take off exponentially. Where and when did that happen? And do you know how it happened?
Well, as far as the whole demo thing in general. I mean, people always thought, oh, he was the Fender guy. Well, I was never hired by Fender. I never had any kind of contract. I never had a guarantee. It was a wink and a nod. And that worked well for a long time because then I could do what I wanted. I didn't have to deal with any, corporate skullduggery or any of that kind of stuff. So, but I would say that the moment that it became, pivotal as far as career-wise in general was when that Cyber Twin amp came out, and that was 2001. And they called me up and they said, "Hey, we got this amp coming out, and it's digital, but yet it's analog, and it does all this stuff, and we've invested a lot of money in this thing, and there's a whole lot of risk about whether this thing's going to take off or not." What I didn't know, and Richie actually told me later, it was Richie's baby, and And he actually proceeded with that amp against the wishes of some of the higher command at Fender. But he was so sure it was going to be big that he kept going and saw it through to its end. So unbeknownst to me, that was a make or break moment for him and for a lot of other people. And I remember getting the amp and having like a day.
Jesus.
To kind of get inside of it, right?
Yeah.
And I've always, I've just been able to have fun with gear. You know what I mean? I'm able to kind of get into it and go, well, shit, this is cool. You can do this and this and this. So I would do things like, okay, well, here's a 58 Bassman sound. I'm going to add blackface reverb to it, and I'm going to put a Leslie thing on it, and then I'm going to make the expression pedal control the rate, and then I'll do another one where it's a super reverb, and it's going to have this kind of an echoplex on it. So I came up with a bunch of different sounds. I already had a shit ton of backing tracks for my records that I had remixed without the main guitar part, so I could do guitarioke for days. And so I catered these sounds to these tunes, and so I went out to NAMM, and I remember they were putting together this what they were calling the Cyber Theater to debut this amplifier. Now, originally they were just going to have me play, and the guy that was in charge of amplifiers, and he still is, Shane Nicholas, great guy, he's a great guitar player. But he basically was just going to go through the talking points. Mm-hmm. And so I come out on stage. Richie and some of the other henchmen were in the crowd. This is like a setup day, and we're running the show to see how these presentations are going to go. And Shane starts going, well, this amplifier has this and this and this, and he was basically just reading off the paper. And Richie's like, if you do this, we're going to be destroyed. You can't. And so it's getting really tense, and like people, tensions are high, voices are raised. So finally there's like a lull, and I go, hey, do you guys mind if I just do this? Can I try one, just me talking? And they're like, go ahead, fine, try. And so I come out, I play a tune, they give me a microphone, and I say, hey, it's really cool. This thing does this and this and this, and you can do this and this and this, and check this out. And I get done doing it, and they looked at Shane, and they go, just introduce him and get off.
And so it begins.
I remember I started doing it, and that was on a Wednesday. So Thursday through Sunday, I did 7 shows a day.
Oh my God!
Through that Sunday, and I remember, like on the Saturday, Bill Schultz coming up to me and shaking my hand and goes, "Congratulations, Greg! You're the talk of the show." Well, Bill Schultz, if he even knew your name, that was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
So that's when they disclosed to me, like, look, we've got a budget, that's, substantial for you to go out and do stuff, at least for this year and probably going forward. And so that kind of started the whole ball. And then that's right when my Hal Leonard thing started as well. So it was all very, timing-wise, it was great because we had just had our 3rd Bambino, and my wife really wanted to stay home with the kids. And that show was pivotal for making that all happen. So my wife ended up, quitting her job and staying home with the kids for quite a few years. And I had to travel a bunch in order to, make the Scalota. But between, and then I got signed with Steve Vai's label at that same show. So
wow.
Favored Nations put out my first record for them that year. My first books for Hal Leonard and DVDs came out, and then I started doing all that stuff with Fender. So that was a pivotal year that it all kind of started going well.
That is cool.
So that was 2001?
Yeah.
That's correct, yeah.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. I remember that amplifier because Guitar Center had them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as far, and it was probably one of these bad tastes that Line 6 had created, that the Fender thing just kind of got overlooked. But they were a much better deal than what Line 6 was offering at the time, as far as the modeling.
To this day, I mean, it's a great amp. I mean, you can do the problem with any of those things is that I used that amp. I got into it. I got into the mindset of I'm going to use this thing, and I used it for gigs. And I used it on records, and diehard purist guys would listen. I would say, "Well, here's the new record." They listen, "Man, what are you getting that tone from?" And I go, "Well, that's the Cyber Twin." They're like, "What?" They Paris. Oh no, I can hear it. Oh, now I can hear it. You know what I mean? Right. But the only thing with those amps is that one day I set it up next to a super reverb, and I hadn't done that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard that big, open, chimey, glorious super reverb, I thought, I need that again. Yeah. So not that, but what was great about what the Cyber Twin did is that obviously it had all those different sounds in it. The effects were killer. I mean, the Echoplex sound of that thing was really exceptional.
Wow.
And it did a lot of good things. And Richie says to this day, he goes, because they sold a shit ton of those amps. And wherever I would go, they would sell. And so by the time I got done, Richie said, you could take as much credit for that success of that amp as anybody, because it was because of doing those tours that it went well. So that really, for me, kind of solidified kind of my, shall we say, the trust of folks to show them things that would be fun to play and therefore buy them. And as a result,
which is the bottom line.
Well, it's interesting because, wouldn't it be great just to tour with the band? And I'm sure I could do it. I got more than enough material. I know how to hold a crowd. I know how to entertain folk. But, the music industry is rife with peril, fraught with peril. And in order to be a successful musician, you got to be gone like 300 days out of the year in order to do anything, especially when you're talking about, roots music that is not actually necessarily mainstream. And especially as you're, older than like 15, you know what I mean? Where you're not someone that could be seen on, The Voice or some damn thing. So what's been interesting for me in this career path that I've, fallen into is that all of these things allow me to pretty much play and say whatever the hell I want. Now, granted, I'm not disrobing and, smashing guitars and being a jagaloon, but as long as I stick within the, the confines of decency, I can pretty much play and say whatever I want. And so I consider myself very fortunate that, I'm doing these Wildwood videos, but I play whatever I want. And people are always like, what's that song? I was like, well, those are my songs. Oh, where can I buy them? Oh, well, as a matter of fact, we got a little website over here, or you can go on iTunes or whatever. So it's all worked out really great for me as far as, as you said, it's a weird career path per se, but hey, you know what? Whatever it takes in this day and age.
Well, absolutely. And Jeff was there with me at the last NAMM
we both sat down in the room for a while at the Fishman.
And we got to go out and see your demo, and it was like, it starts off, you come out, and of course you're just tearing it up. But the cool part was, by the end of that thing, the noise police were coming by, and there was 200 deep. Literally trying to get to see you do your thing, because without a doubt you're like they should you have this thing that they should just Xerox copy you through every booth, because some of them, they're so dry. It's horrible. And then you got yours, and it's like entertaining from beginning to end. It's nobody even left.
Well, he's a might as well be a stand-up comic, that plays really insanely
great
guitar, can get it to do all these different things,
Yeah, man. And I tell you, it's enjoyable.
As well, you guys know, if it wasn't for a sense of humor, I'd probably be an axe murderer. It's like,
well, that is the other career path.
There you go.
That's freaking great, man. That is great.
Yeah. And let me tell you, the Fishman set that you have, because we want to talk about Fishman, because we love Richie Fleegler and those guys over there.
Absolutely.
They're great.
Is an amazing set of pickups, because you have a switch on yours that kicks in the, as you said, it engineered trusses.
Yes. Elaborate series of trusses and flux capacitors and discombobulators.
That's right.
Yes. And what is that? It changes the voice, right? That switch on yours?
Well, exactly. So it's been interesting with the Fluence pickups, because guitar players, as we all are well familiar with, are pretty conservative in terms of accepting new gear and new technologies and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I got to say, when Richie first called me and said, hey, we're working on these pickups with Larry Fishman, I'm wondering if you would like to get involved. And I was real honest. It's like, Richie, I don't care. I said, I love you, Richie, and I know that I've got a lot of respect for Mr. Fishman and the company. I know they make nothing but great stuff. But he said, well, we've got this new technology, and it could be a big game changer, and I know you're the guy. I'm like, and I was on my way to Europe at the time, and I'm already traveling all over the place, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just another thing. I mean, it's nice to be in that position where it's like, oh my God, it's another thing. But I agreed to go out there because he said, trust me, you're going to like this shit. So I went out there, and what I realized right from the get-go was that when I was doing a lot of Fender stuff, Bill Lawrence was going to make me a signature pickup. And there was a little bit of hubbub because they had, Fender just come out with the SCN noiseless pickups, and I was like, yeah, they're okay, but I'm looking for something that sounds more like a regular single coil. And I wanted something that looked like a regular single coil, sounded like indecipherably like a single coil, and also had some kind of an incremental bump, like I discussed when I used to use that blade guitar back in the day. I just like having a little bit of something in case I want to play slide or just want a little bit more beef, something that just adds a little bit of heat instead of like a full-blown coil tap or, Clapton preamp or some shit.
Yeah.
Needless to say, that didn't end up materializing in the Fender realm, but when I went out there and started working with these Fluence pickups, it turned out that that's exactly what these ended up doing. So when they talk about two different voices, it's not like they're built on top of each other. They're two separate platforms that you can access. There's a preamp in there that changes the way that the pickups are actually functioning. They're functioning as a coil that's made out of stacked aerospace circuit boards around magnets. So it's not modeling. It's just that the preamp actually renegotiates that coil to be these two different voices. So you can have one be kind of like a underwound, transparent, glassy delight. And then the other one can be a little bit more, mid-punch and a little bit more higher output. But they work together very, very well. So when we were doing my Tele pickups, we decided that, we ended up calling it like a blackguard, white guard sound. But basically what I just described is what happens. You got the first voice, which is this, very glassy, very squishy, kind of underwound sounding single coil type sound. And then you press the button and it just becomes a little punchier and a little bit more gristle, as I like to say.
little fat.
And during the demo, we were like, whoa.
Yeah,
I mean you hit that
you
thing.
can definitely hear the difference, and it does what it does, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like two different sets of pickups. It's not.
It doesn't get that active.
It's not
pickup
over the top
thing going
anything.
on.
No,
Yeah.
it does exactly that. It gives you a little bump, And,
yeah,
and I'm gonna tell you, when I go out and I travel and I do these demos for Fishman, and I go in and I just request a 65 deluxe reissue, and I go in and I turn that amp on 10. And I keep the EQ flat, and the treble and the bass are like on 5 or whatever. And I can plug that Telecaster into any amp. And I've gone all over the place, and mostly deluxes, but I've used various different amps. But I can make any amp sound like Roy Buchanan with that guitar, and that's
wow.
And that is not an easy thing. And these pickups, they have, I will be honest, they have a little bit higher output than regular single coils, but not to the detriment of the tone. I mean, they still sound like underwound Tele pickups, but they push the amp more. So you don't lose any highs, and you turn down the volume, and then you get that extra incremental push. But literally, I can go straight into any amp, turn it up, and it just sounds. It doesn't get that ratty. You know what I mean? Especially like the Fender reissue amps. A lot of times you turn them up, they can get this kind of woofy low end and kind of ratty top end thing. If you're just using like regular single coil pickups or regular Tele, I can grab this thing and plug it in. It sounds so good. I was like, oh, thank God. So it's really, really cool. I'm so glad it turned out the way that it did. And plus, they look right. I mean, if you're looking at the pickups.
Yeah, they look like
they look like regular Telecaster pickups. Because I always hated that. I remember I got in trouble because on some damn thing I said, I don't want some kind of dual blade looking Barden thing. And I didn't mean anything derogatory about Barden's pickups. They're great.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. But I think if anyone would answer honestly, would you rather have a Tele pickup look normal or look like a Barden? You'd say you want them to look normal. So that's all I was getting at. But and apparently he chiped in and said, "This is a bunch of shit." So
I'm so used to looking at the Bardens.
No offense.
I'm so used to looking at the Bardens because I got Bardens in mind.
Yes.
So I don't know. But it's funny that you brought up Roy, because I was going to ask you, and I think we've already gone past this and figured out that the answer is no. But I was going to ask you if you ever studied with Danny or Roy or Arlen or any of those guys.
No, I mean, I met Danny and I got to know him. We did a show in the early 90s here in town. It was a triple bill. It was our band, which, as I said, was, kind of the new hot thing in town here as far as what we did. And we played, Danny Gatton played, and Mick Taylor played at this club, and it was a great night.
Wow.
And, but Mick Taylor was a headliner, so we had to share dressing room with Danny's band. And I'll never forget, we got done playing, and I'm walking backstage, and I got my blue Strat in one hand, and I got my Super Reverb in the other, and I'm coming backstage, and he's just sitting there kind of playing his guitar, and he looks up, he goes, "You the guitar player?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Jesus," he comes over, and we're like best buddies. It's like we'd known each other forever.
Wow.
And I remember he gave me his address and his phone number and said, "Let's keep in touch, and if there's anything I can do for you." And and I was a fan of his going back to there's a music writer in town here who's from here originally, but is by the name of Bill Milkowski. You may have known him. He writes for Downbeat and Guitar World, but he wrote the Jaco Pastorius book. And and he's in that Jaco documentary quite a bit. He has a lot of different interview things in there. Anyway, so I used to play in a band with his brother. So he was home for the holidays one time and heard me playing, and he comes out to me. He goes, "Do you know who Danny Gatton is?" And I said, "Well, I've seen something in a Guitar Player magazine, like in 1983, had this, rockabilly guys that you don't know about." And I remember one of them was Danny Gatton. There was a picture of him with a Telecaster, and he was playing with Robert Gordon at the time. And I said, "Yeah, I've seen him written up in Guitar Player magazine." He goes, "I need to get you his records." So he sent me a cassette tape, and on one side it was Unfinished Business, and the other side it was Redneck Jazz.
Oh, nice. Wow.
So I scoured those things and plundered them. So when Danny, when I did that show with Danny, I was more than aware of him. And then I was also really into Roy Buchanan, but I didn't get into Roy Buchanan until later because it wasn't in my brother's record collection. Mm-hmm. And where I grew up, I mean, most of the people that were my age, they didn't have older siblings. They were like the oldest for whatever reason, that weird Gen X thing, Yeah. And I was kind of a baby boomer by default. So no one I knew was into cool shit. I thought I was the only one that knew who Hendrix was. I used to joke about it. I go, I think I'm the only one in my entire high school that knows that Greg Allman isn't just Cher's husband. You know what I mean? Or ex-husband, you know what I mean? It's like no one knew anything about the kind of music I was into. I felt, completely, strange. So I didn't have friends going, "Hey, man, you should check out Roy Buchanan." It wasn't until Roy started putting out records on Alligator in the 80s that when Guitar Plays the Blues, I remember I got that record. It's like, oh my God, what are these sounds? And then I remember I went to college. It wasn't until I was in college, and I remember I had to go down the hall to take a shower, and I go back in my room, and I had the blues program on, and I'm hearing this onslaught. And I remember just sitting there dripping, and I couldn't move, and it was fucking Roy it was one of those tunes off of I think it was Roy's Blues off of the live stock record.
Wow.
And I listened to that and I'm going, oh my God, this is like Hendrix, but without a univibe, without a fuzz.
Yeah.
And it's like screaming banshee and harmonics. And I was like, oh my God. So I was a huge fan of both of those guys, but I just studied off records. I was never really around other people that kind of did the stuff that I would eventually end up doing for the most part. I mean, there were a few guys in town here that were certainly influences on what I did, but there wasn't like a huge guitar community here that were into the same type of thing. Let's put it that way. So,
wow. That's all self-taught ear, figuring out what you really like and
10,000 hours.
Figure out how to do it. 10,000 hours, right? Exactly.
Yeah. I put the time in. I mean, I still put a lot of time in. It's people will say, "Well, how did you get to this level, and how did you learn how to do that?" It's like, let's do a quick recap. I said, I don't golf. I don't bowl. I don't hunt. I don't fish. I haven't drank in 21 years. It's like I play guitar and I reproduce. You know what I mean? It's kind of my thing, So
one of them takes a lot longer to do too.
It's like when I'm not, I play guitar. I like to read and I keep on top of things and so on and so forth. But if I'm not playing music, I'm thinking about music and trying to,
And if you're not thinking about it, you're playing it.
Yeah.
There you go. Absolutely.
Now, do you still have students? Because I know that you were teaching for a while, right? Like privately, right?
Well, I never really did a consistent private lesson roster per se. I've always done.
Oh, okay.
I still do some Skype lessons, but I might do like 4 or 5 a month. I was teaching at this college, which actually I just did yesterday, up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I was actually in St. Paul, but my son was going to this music school up there called the McNally Smith College of Music, and I ended up playing a guitar festival that was put on partially by the college, and the head of the guitar department would be like, "Man, we'd love to get you involved with our school in some way, shape, or form."
Oh, wow.
So I started to go up there, and I did, a couple little workshop-y type of things. And then when my son decided to go there, I did more to kind of mitigate the cost.
Sure.
And then they had a guy that ended up quitting and going back to Berkeley to teach. And so they made me an offer I couldn't understand. So I was full-time faculty for a year, and I was only there on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I taught this Music Interp 3, if you must know. And it was a kind of guitar history, both kind of a written history and a musical history of guitar styles from the late 1800s through 1970 of all years. And so I would give them, little playing exercises and a history of all those different genres. And then I had X amount of private students. And so I did that for a year, and that damn near killed me. Because in addition to doing that, I was still doing all my Wildwood stuff, all my Fishman stuff, all my, touring with the band, which I usually go over to Europe a couple times a year and just play gigs over there. And then I still do the odd Fender thing here and there. So it really burned me out, I got to be honest. So when my son decided not to go back to school there, I wasn't exactly weeping.
At the college, did you have to develop the curriculum for that course?
Well, what was interesting is that the guy that left had a book, and I didn't really follow it. I mean, I followed the premise of it, but I came up with my own examples, and I wrote it all out, and I digested the history differently and gave him the points that I thought was that I thought were more germane, as it were. So. And it was pretty satisfying. But at the end of the day, I was like, hey, I taught college, and I never even got my bachelor's degree, so that was even more gratifying.
Totally. Beat the system.
But that was, I enjoyed getting inside of some style stuff that I had a little bit of a grasp on, but I got a better understanding of, the who, what's, and wheres, and so that was really, really cool. So I enjoyed it from that aspect of it. And there were some cool students up there, and I really liked the faculty. The facility is great up there, and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, teaching, I enjoyed teaching from the aspect of it's good to deconstruct what you do, and I'm not bashful about showing anybody whatever they want to know. I mean, I'm not one of these guys that's, proprietary about any of my stuff. I don't give a shit. I was like, my motto is I'll make more, so I really don't mind showing anything. What's weird to me though is and this is a quandary that everyone that teaches anywhere will attest to, is that when you're teaching at a college, it's like there was a couple times on both semesters that when the kids would come in and they weren't prepared, I would look at them, I go, you guys do realize that this career choice is almost impossible under the best of circumstances, right? You guys get that.
Wow.
Yeah. And I go, because you guys are not exhibiting the best of circumstances.
Really, the careers only go to the best of the best. You're not looking like that right now.
Did anybody run to a safe space when you said that, or
coloring books?
Should have. I'll tell you what. It was, but none of them really even got it. What I was trying to say, they're like looking at their phones and shit. I'm like, oh my god. Yeah. And so I only allowed myself to go there once a semester. Other than that, I just would let it roll down my back. I'm like, well, if they don't want to do it, that's their own problem.
Jesus, man, that is incredibly sad to hear.
Well, that's what
that makes me sad.
Yeah, but that's what we have today.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
Yeah,
but the college thing is weird though, because it's one of those things where a lot of those kids, they might probably have wealthy parents and are like, well, my kid's got to go somewhere. You know what I mean? Oh, he likes music. Let's send him there. Yeah. Or, it's a kid that, well, I really don't know what I want to do. I guess I'll go to school for music. And then there's the one guy that's totally dialed in and is going to devour everything. Well, 20 of those other guys that are kind of not really in it for the right reasons. If it wasn't for those 20 guys, this guy wouldn't have the opportunity to go to a place like that and learn it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how you have to look at it. I guess these guys are.
What a way to put a positive spin on that.
Chaff that has to exist in order for the guys that have a somewhat of a chance to be able to do it, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Now, on you were on Jude Gold's podcast, and he's been on ours. We have a relationship with him, and you were talking about somebody that you said you have to check out, which I guess he took some lessons from you, correct? Some guitar player. I can't remember his name now, and it just came to me that you were talking about this younger guy that like really hot.
Jared James Nichols is one of them.
Well, then that's we're trying to get him on the show. He's actually going to be on in the springtime. With us.
Yeah. Jared
was a student of yours.
Oh yeah, and he played. Actually, my son played in the band with him.
He's hot right now, man. That cat is tearing it up.
Yeah. And, Jared, I've known since he's been very, very young. Very nice kid. Plays great. And took lessons, would come over to the house all the time. And Dylan and my son Dylan and him would jam all the time. We went down to, they played at the International Blues Challenge down in Tennessee together. And I went down there with them, and yeah, I've known Jared for a long time. Absolutely. Yeah.
And he is sans pick.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah. He just more or less almost straight in, you know, and you know, does the whole thing. And he's the hot guy out there right now. He's tearing up the social media.
Well, yes, he certainly is.
If he took lessons with Greg, then he knows that you can be straight in, and things work with fingers and volume controls and shit like that.
Yes, I would say that is not a coincidence.
Right. You obviously, because you haven't mentioned any at all, you're probably not a big pedal guy, if any.
Well, you know, it changes. I mean, over the years, you know, there's a pedal that a buddy of mine made for me locally that I still use and have used for a long time. And a lot of people have, I sell a lot of them through my site and whatnot, called the Gristle King. And it has got it's got an overdrive and a clean boost on it. So a lot of times when I'm traveling and I don't know what I'm going to get into, I'll use that into a front end of a Fender amp, and that'll be that. If I'm using that Koch amplifier, I'll go straight into it. If I'm using the Friedman, I'll go straight into it. I like a little bit of delay here and there, but to be honest with you, the less shit, the better. But I do like a rotating speaker sound, so I'm very hot on those Neo Instruments ventilators. I've used that for about 4 years for a rotating speaker sound.
They are awesome.
That being said, if I'm using my harmonic pummeler and I'm just using that delicious onboard vibrato sound that's very univibe-esque, I'll just use that. But that's it. I mean, like when I'm doing leads, I mean, even if I'm using a delay, it'll be very sparse. You know what I mean? Like maybe just a little bit of a trail. And then when I'm doing the chicken picking stuff, I don't like compressors. I don't like a lot of slapback. I have a tendency to just like reverb and not a lot of it. So, if I can get away for years, I would just go straight into my Vibrolux and just crank it up. And if I was in a smaller place, I'd just turn it around and face it at the wall. Just turn it up. That's my favorite way to go. And, especially with those new pickups, I can get away with that pretty easy. And if I want something like a little incremental push, I just press that damn button.
That's right. The more grizzle button.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
That's funny. That's, the whole turn the amp around was a Roy Buchanan thing. But then if you see, there's video of him in the round, and I pity the people behind the stage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's true.
He's on that footage of him on Austin City Limits where that amp is turned around.
Yeah. And it's got JBLs in it.
Ooh.
Man. Yeah, it's funny that you like that rotating speaker sound too. Danny was kind of a fan of that too. He gave me a cool secret about that once.
Oh,
that's very cool.
They sound glorious.
Yeah.
The only problem I have with I'm sorry. What is the secret he told you? Can you impart this morsel?
Oh, I can't tell you on air. I can't tell you on air.
Ooh, it's going to be a secret.
So, hang a minute.
So when we say goodbye, just stay on. because I don't even know it.
It's the first time I've ever told anybody.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, so. But cool. Anything else we should know? Is there a chance that we're going to see the Gristle Man in the northeast part of this country anytime soon?
Boy, you know what? I would hope that would be the case. I don't have anything planned right now, but I'm sure as the year develops, I'll be doing some Fishman stuff out there. Maybe with this new guitar coming out, there'll be some tandem things. I would certainly like to get out with the band because, the band is good. The band is good. And we got out with the band, I'd love to get out and play some places and just, play some gigs. But, as you know, it's hard to get that all going, especially in this day and age, because I'm spoiled because I actually make money doing what I do. So I can't go, oh, yeah, let's go out and see if we'll maybe make money and play a bunch of gigs out there. You know what I mean? I'm just my days of mounting up the Fort O'Connell line with a bunch of grown-ass men and eating ramen noodles and fighting the good fight. Those days are over.
Yeah, buddy. And if you're going out as a 4-piece, hauling the B3 up a flight of stairs.
Oh yeah,
Right, exactly.
Oh my God! But there's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. Wow.
Fact.
Wow.
Cool.
This has been awesome. I've been saying we've been doing this now for coming up on
3 years.
3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
And we've been saying we wanted to get you on, and it has not been disappointing whatsoever.
No, it's been great.
Well, I'm glad to be on.
It has been great.
When you were being interviewed by Jude, he had mentioned us.
Oh, okay.
And Greg, of course, in his Greg way, did this whole heavy metal thing for amps and axes. And I was like, that is so cool, because to hear the show in that way was just nothing that I ever expected.
It's all perception, man. Perception is,
man.
It's reality. So, well, very cool. Greg, thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm glad we finally were able to get you on.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye on you. If you turn up anywhere around here, we'll come see you. I think I'm going to go out to NAMM for a couple of days, so hopefully I'll run into you out there.
Awesome. Yes, I'll be there. In all my fragrant glory.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure I catch you after the Mexican lunch. It'd be great.
Indeed.
So
I'll be flammable at that point.
I'll bring the lighter. So we'll keep an eye out, and all the best to you, man. Best of luck in this crazy, wonderful industry, and
thank you very much. Likewise.
Yeah.
In the with the new guitar thing, and the amp associations, and get your own signature amp that already has your own name on it, and
if anybody listening hasn't checked out any of the YouTube videos, just go out there, type his name in, and there's hundreds.
And by all means, please go to the new website. My wife did a revamp on my website at gregkoch.com. It has all things Gristle on there. So if you want to check out some of the umpteen records and certainly all the DVDs of Hal Leonard instructional stuff and performance stuff, and good Lord, that's where it all happens.
So awesome. that will be with the episode, and it will live in
perpetuity.
That's right, when it goes into the archive. And please hang on, because I'm going to need to talk to your wife about how she did this website.
Yes.
If that's all possible, because I do our website, so I
you'll
like
have to get
some
in
of the
touch
stuff
with her at some point when she's available.
Yeah, and I'm working on Jeff's new East Amps.
Yeah, we got to get the
websites,
East Amps up very soon.
So we might need to chat.
Yeah, so
excellent.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you, and listeners, hope you had fun, and go out there and buy some of Greg's material, man. It's awesome. If you've never heard him play, you got to.
I picked up today, as we speak, Strat's Got Your Tongue from
an oldie but a goodie,
2012, and the song Spank It is oh my God.
Well, what's interesting is that's a reissue record that originally came out in 1995.
Holy crap.
Wow.
And Spank It, all those leads are done in a Pro Junior. It's a telly through a Pro Junior, and it goes back and forth between a 335 and a Pro Junior.
Nice.
You've never heard some. I was like, what, did Johnny Hyland come in on this album? I mean, it's like It's more notes than you can shake a stick at, and it's just crazy.
That's cool.
Oh,
And
that's back when I had hair.
I just love the fact that you came from a 335 too, because I was working on some Robin Ford tones today with the new amp. And it's like I love that guitar. I just love a 335. So
yeah, they sound majestic.
Awesome, man. Well, Greg, once again, thank you. Best of luck in everything you do. Hope I see you at NAMM. And here's to a killer, fantastic musical wonderland of 2017.
I like it. Thank you. Likewise, gentlemen. Take it easy.
Thank you. You too, man. And there you have the story. You know, I'm thankful that it wasn't just a complete onslaught of nonstop humor.
Yeah,
because I'd have busted a blood vessel.
I was fully expecting. There was a lot of times when I had to restrain because he was talking, but he, you know, I just tell everybody, if you get a chance, you know, he's not a household name, but in our community, he's very well known.
Oh,
you know,
God, yeah.
and if you're a guitar player and you've got any kind of, you know, I guess spectrum, you know, a little bit wider than what you may listen to, if you go to YouTube, you know who this guy is.
For sure.
And
for sure.
He is, you know, he's the jokester guy, but that's all the humor that he carries to be able to sell the products and just demo the products. So you're not sitting there like, you know, snoozing watching some guy read off of a paper, right?
Yeah, but you're not going to snooze watching him play either.
No, he is an amazing guitar player. I mean, he is, you know, just pick up one of his albums, you go, oh, you know, you kind of see this other side. And then when you see, if you get a chance to actually see one of his demos, like at the Fishman booth, hang on.
Yeah.
Because he goes through this Led Zeppelin medley that is unbelievable. And it's just him on guitar. There isn't a backing track. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, and if you see the newest thing he just put out, he's also very, very proficient at
7-string heavy metal.
Chuck heavy metal Barry. You know, so yeah, it's awesome. He's just he plays with the sense of humor that he has.
Yes,
and that's absolutely awesome.
You know, just check out his stuff. His albums are awesome.
Yeah,
I mean, I was perusing through all this stuff
and obviously a great guy. So
yeah, just
thank you,
awesome
Greg.
dude.
Thank you,
Even off the air.
Yeah,
you know, it's just the same guy. By the way,
absolutely.
It must be a riot at his house.
Well, there you go.
So until next time, my friend.
Yeah, because we got to do it again. But it's going to be different.
I'm Mick Marcelino,
and I'm not Greg Koch. I'm Jeff Bober. That's it.
And we're always saying
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @Amps and Axes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.